What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Awaken Your Work Life. Why? Because so many of us go to work and we are not happy. And we spend way too many hours doing something that we are not happy about. And I'm the money chick, but the money doesn't show up if you're not passionate and purpose about the work that you do. You either get laid off, you don't get those raises, you don't get the bonuses, people around you start getting crabbier, then you start getting crabby. Oh, it's so like it just infiltrates, right? And this is why Karen and I decided to talk about boundaries today because when we don't hold healthy boundaries for ourselves in the workplace because we think that, well, but I need this job and I need the paycheck and I don't want to, we all start playing that political game, right? And it's like, oh, what happened to authenticity? And authenticity comes with boundary holding.
It does. It does. And you know what? Sometimes I think there may be people who are wondering, like, what, when you guys say boundaries,
What are you
what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? My boundaries in work. And for me and Julie, of course you'll answer it too. It's like, at what places, in what activities, in what mindset, in what actions do I feel like I can be in integrity in ways that are for my highest good, in
Right.
ways that keep me in alignment with well-being.
Right.
Working until midnight 5 days a week is not a healthy boundary for
Or
me.
I was in the airport yesterday. This one, I know people who are watching can completely identify with this. I'm sitting there in a restaurant in the airport yesterday, and this guy is searching all over the restaurant for a plug, right? And when the one plug in 2 tables next to him underneath this guy's seat didn't work, right? Because we've all been there trying to get the plug. Where's the plug? Right? This guy goes, well, I'm just going to have to actually sit here and do nothing for the next hour and enjoy my meal. Like, why are we not enjoying our meals and taking care of our well-being instead of this frantic, I have to work while I'm in transit in an airport? Like, that's just a great example of we're not taking the time. We're not holding those healthy boundaries for ourselves. And I literally just laughed out loud. And I didn't even realize that I laughed so loud out loud until like half the restaurant looked at me because I thought this was so damn funny when this guy did this. And it's like because we've all been there and done that. It's like we're trying to squeeze that last thing in. Let me get this done before I get on the airplane. And I actually think it's terrible now that you can get Wi-Fi on airplanes. Because I used to love, that was my excuse time to not have to respond.
Yep. No responding, a chance to read, catch up on
I can open a
reading or
book.
podcasts or sleep, like even writing, anything that had been on the back burner, being on the airplane, which is like really the last bastion of that opportunity for me is in driving. Like if I'm driving, I like long drives now.
Don't buy a Tesla then. It'll drive itself. I actually know people in my business who are the wholesalers in the investment world, and they are now all buying Teslas because they spend so much time in their cars that they now have turned them into their offices and the car drives themselves. They have built the muscle to be okay with the vehicle driving them.
Yeah, yeah.
I know, right?
And here's the thing, like, I think that many people have discovered that they knew it already, but now this last year has given us an opportunity, quite frankly, to not work at capacity or to jam so hard. And I think people are going to be reluctant to return to a way of life that requires them to jump on that 7:10 train, to get into the office by 8:15, to jam until 5:30 or 6 o'clock, to get home, and like that rat race mentality.
Right.
I think people are going to want to resist that. And
Right.
what we're discovering is that it's possible to resist that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think for people is to consider what's a real requirement and what is an assumed requirement as it relates to boundaries.
Well, because so
Like,
often we've created those stories, right?
yeah,
That
like,
that's how we've trained people to treat us that way. So then
right,
they know how you show up in the world, whether that's real or not, because that's
right.
what you've created. Because we have to remember we're the creators of our own lives.
Yeah, and so not taking 40 minutes for lunch every day, is that a real requirement? Is it what your peers are doing? Is it what you've just become accustomed to doing? Like grabbing lunch, bringing it back to your desk, eating while you're working. Really? Is that real or is that like
Create.
what would happen? What falls apart if you actually step away for 40 minutes and have your lunch away?
Mhm.
Nothing. Nothing is likely to fall apart. So why not do it?
Right.
Why come back and eat at your desk? And honestly, there's psychologists and sociologists have discovered that we need a break. When you're working on something that's intense, you need a break.
Right.
And then you come back and you look at it and you have it's like fresh eyes, right? But like trying to work on something for 6 hours or 8 hours straight,
Or meetings that go more than an hour.
yeah, no need. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, meetings that are not active decision-making environments, or brainstorming sessions of some sort, some reason for there to be a collaborate, for people to be sitting in the same room.
Mhm.
You don't need to sit people in the same room just to report.
Right.
That's not necessary.
No, and often it drives me crazy, like when I'm sitting in a business meeting and then everybody's on their phones and they're not even like paying attention. So the meetings are taking longer because not everybody's fully engaged. And so this is where some of these healthy boundaries, I actually had somebody, and remember it's cultural. So if you're in companies have cultures. So it may be the culture that you're in that's the norm, and maybe you don't have the rank or whatever to change it. But this is where coming from a place of empowerment that you can actually decide going, you know what, I want to get to an environment where this shifts. And that's some of the healthy boundaries that you can hold too. And saying whether it's with this company or me moving to another company.
Yeah, and I want to also like underscore you are not ever completely powerless.
Ever. But
Never.
why do we feel like we are? And I
Yeah.
know so often because I'm the money chick. People feel like they're not empowered because of their financial situation.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of income affluence in this country and around the world, but there's not a lot of people that are asset affluent, but we have a lot of debts, right? We constantly are working today to pay for our financial choices in our past that shows up in our debt levels.
Mhm.
And that's why I feel like so many people don't come to the table in a place of empowerment,
Yeah.
especially at work.
Yeah, and I call it your sphere of influence. Like we all have a sphere of influence. May not
Mhm.
seem like it, but there are people who trust you, whom you trust, who you can get to move, shift, reconsider, consider.
Right.
And it's an exercise to really take pen to paper and say, who is directly in my sphere of influence, both at
Mhm.
work or at home in our personal lives?
Yep.
Do that inventory because changes you think you may not happen. And sphere of influence includes allies. We all have allies in our work environment. They may not work in our same department,
Yep. Right. Right.
but we have people that we have befriended that have become, even if they're not hangout buddies, there are people who you feel
Totally.
like you can go to, who you trust, who you share stories or experiences with. Make a list of those people and who they are, because your sphere of influence includes your allies. And when you have an idea or there's something that you want to perhaps change,
Mhm.
those people become your sounding board. They become the people who you can test an idea with, you know, maybe even start the process.
Yep. Well, and that leads me to another thing in terms of listing out not only who those people are, but I have clients all the time list out what are the attributes of those people, right? Because then you can start to recognize and identify going, oh, all these people, what do they have in common? And that's why they're my ally. And you start to see some of these components. Like I've done that with employees that I have loved to work with through the years. And it's like, why was it? And one of the biggest things is I am not a micromanager whatsoever. And I need people around me who are going to be able to be self-sufficient and pull the bootstraps up and be an actual pillar for my organization.
Yeah.
Now, I had this one gentleman who worked for me years ago. I started to notice that, God, he was a pillar for me, but because he wanted to be the knight in shining armor and always come and save the day. So he always hired people who are dysfunctional underneath him, and we couldn't grow because he had the knight in shining armor archetype.
Yeah.
So when you start to, and this is healthy boundaries, right? So this is about like looking at who are those people and how do they operate. And so that whether you're interviewing employers to work for or interviewing people to work for you, then now you know some of these things. Like, tell me about like your past, and you ask questions that nobody else is asking because you know the attributes of what it is that you really desire to be around to create those allies around you.
Mm-hmm.
And many times we don't go to that depth because we don't think that that matters on some level, but it
Well, or
absolutely
that
does.
we are in a position to create any kind of dynamic change. We
Yeah.
make an assumption that if I don't hold a certain title or if I don't have access to certain people or resources, I can't begin to make a change. And
Right. And that's a
I don't
belief
think
system
that,
and it's a story.
yeah, don't think that that's accurate.
That's what we have to understand, that our minds, our conscious minds really do create stories, and watch what stories that you are actually hooking to and amplifying and creating more of so that you can start to detach from it.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And all of this has to do with boundary holding. And it may seem a little esoteric to some people, but I'm telling you, I not only do I practice this myself, but also with other clients and them
Let's,
using it.
I was gonna say, let's talk about what happens or how to recognize when you're not holding a boundary.
Well, that's to me, you really have to pay attention to your body intelligence because our bodies tell you the answers. Like I am forever asking people, well, how does it feel? And they always tell me what they think. Always. Why? Because we have a very good educational system and it's taught you to reason. This is the age of reason, like reason things out, right?
Yeah.
Like we reason things out. The problem is we have ignored our body intelligence, which is the feeling part of the equation, to share then how, and they're like, and I'll have to like, okay, I understand that that's the way you think. I said, tell me how you feel. And then they try again and they tell me how they think in a different way. And I'm like, drop into your body. Like, let's take a deep breath. Like, you're not even coming from your body intelligence. I'm like, so this shows up when you're not holding healthy boundaries. Like, are you feeling anxiety? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel excited? Is it making you giggle? Is it making you get that grin on your face that you just can't wipe off?
Yeah.
Like, what is that physical body reaction? Because I write about this in my book, The Emotion Behind Money, which is my first book, that our bodies are way smarter than our minds,
Way.
way smarter, but we've ignored them. And we've abused our bodies with eating, smoking, drinking, not getting enough sleep. And this all turns off and dims our body intelligence.
Yeah, and we haven't really gotten into the mind body connection a lot here because I know that you have conversations, you've got some other Awaken series, but you know, the body is going to give you symptoms
Mm-hmm.
of when things are not right. Like ailments are notifications that there are things that are not right. right? That seems pretty obvious. But many of those things have roots in our lifestyle and in our emotional body.
Mm,
It's like,
so true.
I've got heartburn.
It's not just heartburn.
No.
There is a great book out there by Louise Hay that's called Heal Your Body, Heal Your Life.
Yeah.
And she talks about and I found this book when I was researching for when I was writing my first book on the emotional side of things. Our emotions actually tell our physical limbic system in our bodies. So if you have an emotion, you have heartburn, right? So the heartburn has been created. And actually, let's use this as an example. I have her book on an app on my phone. And if you look up heartburn, we're just going to play here a little bit to show people what we're talking about. So heartburn, let's see. Heartburn. The emotional cause of heartburn is fear, 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 clutching fear. So you operate in the world from a place of being in a fearful state. And the new thought pattern, because again, our limbic system sends messages. So if you're operating in fear, you're telling your limbic system going, this is how we operate, this is how we operate, this is how we operate. And then it tells your body to, that's what creates the heartburn. Okay. It causes the acid in your body.
Yep.
And the new thought pattern that she says that we have to start to shift to so that our limbic system can send a different messages. I breathe freely and fully. I am safe and I trust the process of life.
Yep.
And
And
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and then just like anecdotally, this makes sense, right? Because when you're nervous about something, you get those butterflies in your stomach.
Sure.
Like when you're nervous or you're anxious about something, that region of your body gets overactive, right? And that's what creates that like reflux, the heartburn, the like that fear center, right? Is what gets activated, fight or flight, right? So that even anecdotally, even if you don't know the science or you don't know the spiritual connection, it just makes sense that that's what would that anxiety and fear would be creating in that region of your body.
And I talk about this in my first book. I realized 50% of my male clients got cancer right around their hip area between age 55 and 65. And I was like, how did all these guys get colon or prostate cancer? I was like, this is like an obnoxious number in my client base. And at the time, I was working a lot with Deepak Chopra. And he says that a cancer cell develops because that cell has lost its sense of purpose. So then I went back and I was like, how would all these guys have lost their sense of purpose? And you know what was the common thread I found with every single one of them, Karen?
What was
every one of them were let go of their job, not by their choice.
Wow.
Every one of them. So the kids are grown. You're starting to reconnect with your spouse or not, right? Because you've been the provider all these years. And now your job dropped you like a hot potato.
And
you're going,
that's all very first chakra region.
Yep.
And that's all home and hearth.
Yep.
Like it's stability.
Right.
It's the stuff that's like, do I have a roof over my head? Do I feel safe? Do I feel secure? Do I like have food to eat? And if you're recently let go, it creates that fear.
Right. So your physical body, you're now sending messages all over your system going, alert, alert, alert. How do I operate the world? And we don't even realize that this is so subliminal in our bodies that we don't even realize that, if we were holding healthy boundaries early on, because not one of these guys did not get a signal way before this ever happened that they were supposed to leave that job a long time ago.
Yeah.
But they stayed in those jobs because they were great providers for their family and they put that ahead of their own well-being.
Well, and here's the thing, like it's a little bit ironic or maybe it's paradoxical that we in our work worlds do things and expect others to trust us. We expect them to trust our judgment, to trust our logic, to trust our thoughts, our suggestions.
Yep.
And yet we won't do that for ourselves.
So true.
We won't trust. This doesn't feel right. I don't feel good. That doesn't seem like the correct direction to go. We will push that aside, question it, doubt it, think it doesn't have relevance, doesn't make much sense, because maybe it didn't come from what we consider to be the most logical direction. But like, how can we do that? How can we expect others to listen to what we have to say, to trust our judgment, to follow our lead, and we won't do that for ourselves?
Right. And that is the biggest boundary that you can hold,
Correct.
because you matter. And we've been told that if you take care of yourself first, that's selfish.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think of my own Catholic upbringing. It's like, you're supposed to do for others before you do for yourself. And I'm like, that is the biggest crock of baloney that I've ever heard. It's like all that does is perpetuate a system to keep suffering cycles going.
Not only that, but it's
Get out of this fear-based patterning in your life. I'm
it
like,
is a feudal system mentality,
right,
right? Like
right,
that is designed to keep the people who are serving other people in servitude.
right.
You need to do for others before you do for yourself, which means show up for me before you show up for yourself.
Exactly. Right.
It's
So
it's
true.
it's crazy. And so just think about that for a second. Like, why would anybody trust you? Should they? If you're not willing to trust yourself.
Right. Right.
And you get signals in terms of, as Julie mentioned, feelings, emotions, and physically in your body.
Right.
And they're telling you something.
Yep.
Yeah.
We just have to listen to them.
We have to be willing to take a risk and listen to them.
Well, and I always tell people it's like building a muscle,
It is.
right? Like, it's okay to be like, okay, well, that's the way I'm feeling. I need to pay attention, but I'm not really sure. And, and that's okay, because it's okay for you to start to try to build that muscle and to try to, you know, get it to that next right step.
And what I share with people, Julie, is sometimes it's too hard to fully believe. Like, yes, I've got it. I understand that's over here on this side. But
Well,
then there's the other side, which is like, wah, wah, it'll never work. Well, we don't want to be there. We don't want to be there. But somewhere in the middle, I call it the neutral zone.
So true.
Is I wonder. So here's the thing. You can say, you don't have to say like, yes, I completely get it, but you could say, I wonder what would happen, or I wonder what I'll feel, or I wonder what the outcome will be if I just listen to what this is saying, or follow the thought path that's coming up for me. Like, you don't you can still ultimately choose to do or not do it, but look at it.
Right. Yeah. Take a look. That's how you have to do, is be willing to take a look.
Yep.
And then that just cracks things open a little bit. And then it starts to really open up, and then you start to see more, and you start to like go, oh, wow. And then you'll start seeing things that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And you're like, why didn't I see this before? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you weren't loving yourself enough before, and you weren't holding the boundary enough before. And now you are, and now you're seeing it.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating to me. I've gone through like 5 or 6 iterations of different employees. And so as I started holding stronger, okay, let's go back to my world, right? So if I think about my work life, so we are who we are, no matter who we are, and wherever, whether it's your family life, your work life, your personal relationships, being a parent, spouse, whatever, friend. So I'm the second oldest of 12 children. I know how to take care of people. Like, I could do that in my sleep. I know how to get it done, and I know how to take care of others, even when they can't take care of themselves. So what do you think my first level of employees were like?
Your kids.
They definitely weren't independent. I can tell you that. God love them all. They're very good people. but they were not independent because I attracted, this was what my creation, this is how we have to understand that we are the creators of our lives. I created a company of everyone who depended on me, and it was always their number one and I was number two.
Well, it's also what you knew.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And because that's the way I interfaced with my family. That's the way I interfaced in my relationship. And so of course, that's the way I interfaced at work. And so as you unpack this and you start to do things, now I'm sitting here, 27 years later in running a company. I don't have anyone who works for me that's, dependent, interdependent is where it's all at, because I don't want to pull anyone and drag anyone along with me. I'm done. My coattails are out of service.
Here's the thing, for those of you who are listening, it is a muscle. It is a practice. Don't feel badly if you're starting to recognize things like, ooh, that's me, or ooh, I've done that, or ooh, that's what my life is like right now. It's okay.
Right.
It's completely okay.
Absolutely.
The point is to begin to recognize what's happening and then choose what you would prefer.
Right.
And we all have to start someplace.
Mm-hmm.
We have to start someplace. And we've all, Julie and I have both evolved from what we knew, which starts with how we're raised.
Totally.
Right? Really?
Communities we grew up in, right? It's not only our households, it's the communities too.
Right. Yep. How we were socialized. And then you reach an age where you can really begin to discern. And that discernment is very powerful in helping you to recognize, like, ooh, maybe that's not the truth for me.
Right.
Yeah.
100% agree. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, by all means, like any of you who are watching, like we would love to help you in your work life. Send us a direct message. We are here to help. And Karin and I can talk about like healthy boundaries and everything that we've been doing for weeks now. And but we want to make sure that we're really helping you on an impact. So if you'd like to be on a panel with us and
come
on over. We are definitely happy to help you along your journey. And I did put a link below. I am giving away my book, Awaken Your Wealth, at no cost, just for shipping. No charge for the book.
Get it.
Shipping. And Karin, I put there Beyond Blind Spots is where they can get a hold of you. And anything else you'd like to share with those watching?
Just be willing to stand in the neutral zone and say, I wonder, and watch.
My new word is interesting. My new word is interesting. I'm like, when things arise, I go, well, that's interesting.
That is my absolute favorite word. Like, really, it is the most neutral word for
curiosity.
Right? Like, oh, that's interesting.
And that's how you stay in neutrality. That way you don't go into your old patterning and your reactivity, and you're holding space for that muscle to build.
Indeed.
Beautiful thing. Well, all right. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday for another session of Awaken Your Work Life.
Always great. Bye.
Bye.